Hey, come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. I'm over here. Over here. Come on. Come on over. I want to chat with you a few minutes. If you don't know who I am, my name is John Carver, and today I want to share some thoughts with you on the subject of my pleasure. Now, I go to the gym about 4 to 5 days a week. I was allergic to the gym. In fact, if you mentioned the word exercise, give me the willies, because I did not like exercise. So after I go to the gym, maybe 80% of the time, I decide to go to a place called Chick Fil A, because I normally don't eat breakfast before I go to the gym. I drink some, I don't know what you call it, this power juice before I go to the gym and do my thing at the Gold's Gym in Westminster, Maryland. Then I need some protein right away. So I go over there to Chick Fil A and I order an 8-piece entree and a medium sweet tea light ice. Thank you very much. When I order it, I go to the window and pay for the bill, pay for the food. And every single time I hear my pleasure. So that's kind of like where I got the title from this text, so I kind of borrowed it. In fact, their mission statement at the Chick Fil A is to be America's best quick service restaurant. And again, to be America's best quick service restaurant. Now, Dan Cathy said, CEO, he says, I believe that we achieve our best results in life through consistency. My spiritual life revolves around 4 practices. Regular worship, he says, regular Bible study, regular prayer, regular tithing. And then the foundation of it all is service. That is, serving people around him. That's kind of like the big picture I want to share with you here in this space about serving other people. In fact, he goes on to say, he says, at its core, service means an act of helpful activity. He said, I would take the definition a bit further and say that it also means treating others with honor, with dignity and respect, and doing everything you can to ensure you are impacting the lives of people in positive ways. So again, every time I go to Chick Fil A, whether I go indoors, inside to eat, or go through the drive-thru, I hear my pleasure. You know how hard it is to have an attitude of servanthood when you're going through a bad day? Do you know how hard it is not to carry your bad day into the lives of other people around you? You know how hard that is? For me, that's like really hard. Because at the moment you're going through a bad day, you don't really care who's around you. You don't even want to be around people, but you have to because of work or other responsibilities. Rick Warren said, he said, when I'm abrasive, I'm not persuasive. Again, when I'm abrasive, I'm not persuasive. I wonder how many times you have been abrasive and wondered why maybe certain people haven't been attracted to you or haven't bought into what you were trying to convey at any given time. Now, you and I, you may not realize it right now, but you and I have special abilities and special gifts and special talents, and we're supposed to, that's not always easier said than done, I know, but we're supposed to be faithful in leveraging those gifts for other people. And Bill Bryan shares a story. He says, the key is not so much to identify what we have, but what we've been given. And in fact, over in the Bible in 1 Peter chapter 4, it says, each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, and then faithfully administrating God's grace and God's gift. There's a story in the Bible, in the New Testament, that Jesus taught. In fact, Jesus told stories all the time. That's what he was known, well, one of the things he was known for, is telling stories. He didn't complicate stuff at all. He just kept it real simple, really light, but profound. In one paraphrase of Matthew chapter 25, it says, again, the kingdom of heaven, it can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on the trip. The servant who received 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earn 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. He just hid it. After a long time, in verse 19, it says their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how he had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 5 more." The master was full of praise, the story says. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." So the servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities." The paraphrase says, "Let's celebrate together." Then, in verse 24, the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops, and you didn't even plant, and gathered crops you didn't even cultivate. But I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." Verse 26, so the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant, and I gathered crops I didn't cultivate, then why didn't you deposit the money in the bank? At least I could have gotten a little interest from it." Now here's where it gets a little ugly. He said, then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver." In other words, he didn't leverage the responsibilities he had. What we have, what you have, and what I have is not ours. Let me just pause a minute and talk about that. Whatever you have, whatever gifts you have, whatever benefits you have, whatever blessings you have, are a result of the kindness and the compassion and the patience of other people. If you stop and think about it, because most of what you have right now is a result of the sacrifices that people made before you. Yeah, you're standing on the shoulders of other people that have gone before you, and guess what? So am I. So when we fail to realize that there are people that have gone before us and worked their tail off to get where they are, and we just learned from them, and not to allow ourselves to be good people, to allow people to stand on our shoulders so they can get farther ahead faster, shame on us. It's really important because the story kind of gets into a little bit more detail. The master gave the first servant 5 talents, which by some estimates was $1.5 million. The second guy was given 2 talents, which in that culture was a sum of money, a form of cash. Or these days, maybe around $600,000. And the third, he was given $300,000. Even though there was a big difference between the 5 and the 1, the guy who received that 1 still had a ton of money, and he didn't invest it at all. In fact, he was afraid that he wasn't going to do a good enough job. How many times haven't you been afraid that you weren't going to be good enough? So instead of doing something, you did nothing because you didn't think that it would be good enough. Let me let that sink in for just a minute. How many times haven't you not done anything proactive in your life because you didn't think that it was good enough, or that people would look at you and judge you and think, well, he's not this, or she's not that, or they didn't do the best they could when you're doing everything you can just to get where you are? I'm asking you today to think about the opportunities that you have all around you to bless other people, to honor other people, to serve other people. You see, your responsibility is tied to your ability. Again, your responsibility is tied to your ability. You know, certainly I would be foolish to think that somebody would give me a hammer and nails and ask me to build a house, because I am a total klutz when it comes down to mechanical things. I married a wife that is fantastic with these things. So for years of in my marriage, too many years, maybe a few years, I would get a little frustrated. In fact, I would get a lot frustrated when I couldn't fix something or repair something or put something together, because men are supposed to do these things. Men are supposed to be the smart of the smart, the wise of the wise, the stronger of the strong. Throw that philosophy out the door. I'm good at certain things. She's good at the rest. And I have no problem with that now. It took me 4, 6, 7, 10 years to get that through my thick head. But now I leverage the gifts. I leverage the talents that I might have. And I think maybe you too. You know, so many people, they invest so much time trying to get stronger in their weak areas instead of getting stronger in their strengths. That is, to perfect their strengths, because they're wasting all these years trying to learn how to, if you will, build a house when they're wired to be an accountant, or they're wired to be a barber, or they're wired to do something else. Again, your responsibility is tied to your ability. You have what you have because of a variety of reasons. And I think one of the biggest reasons is that you were born with certain tendencies, certain characteristics, certain skill sets that are latent. Maybe they need to be developed and seeded just a little bit. Maybe they need people to help you grow them and to water them and to fertilize them. In an earlier century, there lay a large boulder in the middle of a roadway, the story said. Traveler after traveler walked past the boulder, veering off the side of the road to get around it, all the while they were shaking their heads and muttering, "Can you believe that someone should get that big thing out of the way? What an inconvenience." Finally, a man came along and, seeing the boulder, took a branch from a tree and pried the boulder enough to get it rolling and rolled it off to the side of the road. The story doesn't end there. So, lying underneath the rock, he found a small bag with a note. The man picked up the note and it read as follows. Listen to this. "Thank you for being a true servant of the kingdom. Many have passed this way and complained because of the state of the problem and spoken of what ought to be done. But you have taken the initiative. You have taken the proactive steps," the story said. In fact, you have taken the responsibility upon yourself to serve the kingdom instead. You are the type of citizen we need more of in this kingdom. Please accept this bag of gold that traveler after traveler have walked simply by because they didn't care enough about the kingdom to serve. Now that begs a question for you and for me. I wonder what bags of gold we're missing each day simply because we don't bother to get involved in serving other people. Because I think there's more of a win-win in life than you can imagine. Not all the time, but many times. That is, as you serve, you're served. As you're serving others and lifting other people up and making a difference in their lives, you get something back too. No, it's not money in your pocket most of the time, but it's certainly a measure of satisfaction to know that you're making a difference in somebody else's life. Stephen Arterburn shared a story. He says, technically speaking, David Ring was born dead. Quick-acting personnel, medical personnel, were able to get him breathing, but oxygen deprived him, left him with cerebral palsy. He suffered from a speech impediment, hands that don't cooperate, and a limp. As if that wasn't enough adversity for one person, both his parents died by the time he was 14 years old. And his brothers, who were also ill, they died of AIDS. David's remaining family members feared that David would never have a normal life because they assumed he would never marry and never have children or drive a car or earn a living or even take care of himself. As a teenager, David he surrendered his life to a higher power, and once he began to see his circumstances being chosen for him, I think by a higher power, he began moving forward. So today he's married, he has several children, drives a car, and speaks to more than 250 audiences each year. In fact, he sells these shirts at his speeches. It says, "Don't whine, shine." So David Ring has taken responsibility for his life. The bad, the difficult, and the wonderful, and he continues to celebrate the difference he's able to make in other people's lives. So when people wrestle with difficulties and struggles that they go through in life, we have to remember stories like David Ring, who kept getting back up. I think we must invest what we've been given, like the story I shared moments ago. How many times haven't you been given gifts, that you've been taught some really amazing skill sets or information, and you've done nothing with it? You've gone to school to study a certain thing, and you've not done anything with it. You've been taught certain things at work from a leader who really cares about you, and you've done nothing with it. This shows us something very, very important. I think that you and I have to realize that we have been given opportunities to do things that are frankly designed just for us. Zig Ziglar said one time, "You are the only person on earth who can use your ability." Again, Zig Ziglar, the great late Zig Ziglar, said, "You are the only person on earth who can use your ability." Because you were born to do certain things. In fact, I would suggest that I know of older people who've passed away who had yet to realize why they were born in the first place. They died not knowing who they are. These are stories of people, like we shared earlier, about the landowner who was happy with the people that were proactive and very displeased with the people that were afraid to act. How many times haven't you and I been afraid to act because we didn't know what the end result was going to be based on our actions, even though our actions were worthy, even though our actions were ethical and moral? We didn't know what that end result was going to be, so we kind of went into our cave, our little warehouse, if you will, and just left ourselves alone and didn't want to bother anybody because we were afraid of what the outcome was going to be. And you know what? That's typical for some of us, including me. You're afraid of what the outcome is going to be or what negative opinions you could get from other people. So you don't want to hear it, you don't want to see it, you don't want to be involved in it, so you would rather just be average and ordinary instead of sticking your neck out there like a turtle, and really putting yourself in a position that you have to either do it or look like a liar or a fool. And I'm telling you, that's not easy to do, because sometimes it's easier just not to do anything at all. Because it's safe. When you don't do anything at all, it's safe. Nobody's going to bug you. You're not going to get in trouble. No, you're not going to be seen. But when you start to do the extraordinary, because most people are average and ordinary, so when you take steps to be extraordinary, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get noticed, and a percentage of people are going to hate you. A certain percentage of people are going to assume that you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But you have to stay focused because you're doing it, I hope, because you want to serve people. So let's look at the differences between the two servants and the one who took a dive, that is the one who buried the cash. The first one was willing to work hard and take risks. Again, the first two, I should say, were willing to work hard and to take risks. And the third one took no risk at all. That's really hard for some of us to get through our heads because you might not know it, but I'm an introvert. I know you don't believe that, but I'm a big time introvert. So for me to consistently do things that are frankly the opposite of who I am internally, that is, in the jobs I have, I'm in front of people. I'm proactive about contacting people. I don't wait for people to contact me. Whereas a true introvert that's afraid of his own shadow or her own shadow is going to wait for things to happen for them instead of them getting out there and making things happen. It's really difficult sometimes. And the first two servants in the story I shared earlier were in it to please their master. They were in it to serve and please somebody else. And let me just pause there for a minute. Your why needs to be so big that you're willing to put yourself in a position that's uncomfortable for the sake of somebody else. Let me say this maybe a different way. Maybe internally you are scared out of your mind. Maybe internally you really don't want to get out there and do the things for people that maybe your heart wants you to do, but you also don't want to let people down in the process. So you place yourself in a situation where you are going to do it not because of you, not because you feel you need to, but because you want to help other people. So again, if you reframe your why in a way that's not focused on you, guess what happens? It pulls us introverts out of our shell that says, you know what, it's going to be terrifying for a period of time. It's going to be scary. It's going to be intimidating. But what I'm going to do is not about me. What I'm going to do is because somebody else might need what I have. Maybe they'll hear one sentence, or they're going to see me doing one thing, or one thing I do for somebody else, they're going to see, and then that's going to create a springboard for them in their lives. The first two servants in this story allowed the master's gift to change their lives. But the third guy refused to let the gift touch his life. The first two invested, and the third one wasted it. The first two saw a blessing. The first two saw an opportunity, and the third guy saw a burden. He saw this is a waste of my time. Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to place myself in this situation? In the Old Testament, in the book of Proverbs, it says, how long will you lie there, my paraphrase, you lazy bum? When will you get up from your sleep? Proverbs 10 says, he who gathers crops in summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Yikes. What does that tell you? That means that you and I are supposed to jump on opportunity, meaning that you work when it's time to work. You sleep at night. You know, you work from the moment sun rises or almost when sun. The point is you got to work until. You don't wait for stuff to happen. You make stuff happen. You leverage your gifts and your talents for other people consistently. Over in Hebrews in the New Testament it says this, we want each of you to show the same diligence to the very end. In order to make your hope sure, we do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherited, my paraphrase, some really good stuff. There's a story of a young boy, who was the father of a drifter. This boy worked as a store clerk for a while, but the store failed. He bought a partnership in another store, but it failed also. He ran for Congress and lost both times. He ran for vice president and lost. He became the 16th president of the United States. Abraham Lincoln was the man's name. You might know him. There's another boy who was called a slow learner. A teacher recommended he be withdrawn from school because of his seeming inability. He tried to go to school in Switzerland, but failed the entrance exam, and he was fired from 3 teaching positions. But at age 26, he won the Nobel Prize. He was Albert Einstein. Time after time after time, I read stories of these people who were labeled something less than above average or even average. And because of their tenacity, because of their recognition that they have something deeper inside them that could be a blessing to somebody else, they kept going. They kept moving forward. They kept working on changing other people's lives. Late one summer evening in Broken Bow, Nebraska, a weary, tired truck driver pulled his rig into an all-night truck stop. The waitress had just served him when 3 tough-looking, leather-jacketed motorcycles of the Hells Angels type decided to give him a hard time. Really hard time, in fact. Not only did they verbally abuse him, one grabbed the hamburger off his plate, another took a handful of his French fries, and a third picked up his coffee and began to drink it. How would you respond? Well, this trucker didn't respond as one might expect. Instead, he calmly rose, he picked up his check, walked to the front of the room, put the check and his money on the cash register, and went out the door. The waitress followed him to put the money in the till and stood watching out the door as the big truck drove into the night. When she returned, one of the bikers said to her, "Well, he's not much of a man, is he?" She replied, "Oh, I don't know about that, but he sure ain't much of a truck driver. He just ran over 3 motorcycles on his way out of the parking lot." Yeah, that's probably not the way to handle things, but I would suggest to you that maybe you should consider treating people a little more respectfully, even though they may not live a lifestyle that's like you. Let me say it maybe a different way. There are people all around you that don't walk the same path that you do. And it's very easy for you and I to judge them based on their path is not the same as your path. And you think your path is the path, that is the right path. And they think their path is the right path. Well, if you're over here and they're over here, you're not going to be able to impact them at all because you're unwilling to walk on their path and they're unwilling to walk on their path. So who's going to be the bigger adult here? Who's going to be the one with the bigger heart, with enough love in their heart that's going to step over the other side and make a difference in somebody else's life? This is what really Christianity, if you will the foundation of Christianity really is. Jesus was a rabbi at the time, and he, in that culture, the non-religious and or the religious came to the religious, that is the rabbis and the teachers. Jesus chose in his culture, in his environment, to go out and serve people where they lived. And I think that might be a model for you and I, that if we really want to impact people's lives in a big way, we need to be proactive about going after people that we want to serve with a my pleasure attitude like Chick Fil A, to go out of your way, even when it's uncomfortable, to be a blessing to other people. And I think you're going to find opportunities that are going to be extraordinary because you've put yourself out for somebody in your life that may not look just like you. My name's John Carver, and I thank you for watching today. Thanks for stopping by the way.